today's podcast guest is John Scott. Finally, John, thank you for coming on the podcast. Lovely to have you.
Thank you, Adam. We could make a little edit there, correction. Not to edit out completely. Johnny.
Johnny. Well, the thing is, I knew you as John, didn't I? I knew you as
exactly.
John, and that's why it's got stuck in my mind, the John. But I mean, to be honest, that's where I was going to start. To say, look, we always go at the start of the podcast back to the start, back to where the person, began. But I'm going to take it the other way around with you, Johnny. Like, where are you now as Johnny as opposed to John? I mean, I knew you. I mean, it was in Cornwall. I was 20, so that's like 25 years ago, right? And a lot has gone on since we've seen each other again. So I wanted to know, what does Johnny stand for now? Before we go back to the start, maybe.
Well, for you, Adam, and for your audience, it'll come through this vessel, the teachings. Basically, what I've learned through my yoga over the last 35 years plus is, what is your passion in life? When did you have your passion in your life? Okay? And so this takes us back to our childhood. Before mum or dad or anybody else was saying, Johnny, what do you want to be when you grow up? Yeah. So what was your passion? What was your excitement in life? Now, let's say, ironically, I was Johnny for 32 years of my life. When I met Derek Island, I was Johnny. 2 years later, I then met Patabi Joyce, Guruji. Guruji named me John Scott, because at the time there was a Johnny Smith, and instead of having a Johnny Smith and a Johnny Scott, which was too confusing for Guruji, he just called me John Scott. Now, in a sense, that was when I became an adult. So all my 32 years, I was sort of Johnny. Now, this is the carrot of Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga and the carrot of the Guru. Yeah, I became somebody. I became John Scott. This is really important to understand. I became a material world figure. And so, in a sense, that's the opposite to yoga. I became a person going out to be somebody rather than going in to be nobody. And so, yes, I became somebody, and in the process of becoming somebody, I was getting then irritated with the way that I was part of the material world. And so it wasn't really until the COVID struck. When the COVID really struck, big changes happened. Many people changed many things in their lives during that period. My period of COVID was looking in and realizing that I didn't want to see who I had become. And in the process of not wanting to see who I had become, I actually lost the sight in my right eye.
You put the two together.
Yeah, it's a big question. So, what is, we all say, we meet ourselves on the mat every day with the practice, And so what I was meeting was who I had become rather than what I was doing in terms of the real yoga. And so what happened was I fell out of myself in love with Derek. I fell out of myself in love with Guruji. I fell out of myself in love with the practice. I also fell out of love with my first wife, Lucy. I also fell out of myself into love with my beloved Julia. So what I realized in the yoga and the meditations of the yoga, realizing that I had fallen out of myself, becoming somebody else, becoming someone for Derek, becoming someone for Guruji, becoming someone for the yoga community, becoming someone for my wife, becoming someone for my children, becoming someone for my beloved. Where was Johnny? So in the whole process of that, also, over the years, time is ticking on. And so last year was my 66th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Which
that's crazy.
Which was the UK retirement. So I retired. And in the process of retiring after COVID, and I just realized I needed to go back to being Jonny. I needed to find myself again. And so you asked me about my house. I am building my house. So what is my passion? One of my passions as a dyslexic person is being spatial. And so I like to create spaces, which in a sense is architecture. So I'm becoming my own architect. I'm creating the space for my life. I'm creating the space for my life to where to live, how to live. I'm making that connection to nature. And so I'm falling back into myself, back to what it was when I was young Jonny, and building, making things, creating things. Back to that time when we were children, when we were creators. We had our awareness, we had our attention, we had our inquiry, we had our imagination. And from the imagination, life became magical, mystical, and we created miracles. So the yoga, in a sense, took me so far out of myself into the material world to then all of a sudden catapult me back.
One thing that always impressed me, and maybe people don't know about Jonny, is that he's always an incredible builder. You've always built your own places and and spaces, and you've done that in Cornwall. You did that in New Zealand. I think, that is. I feel that's always been with you, that imagination and that creativity, that ability to build stuff, which is very impressive to me. But let's talk a little bit about the yoga then. What still comes across to me is one fundamental thing where you always start is this counted method. So if people don't know, would you mind going through the importance of the Guruji's mantra or the counted method as you see it?
Okay, so we have the Yoga Sutras, and Patanjali, and I have what I call the Guruji Sutras. And so for me, the first Guruji Sutra is Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga is mind control. So Guruji, in Guruji's language, would call it mind control. In my language, I would call it reclaiming your own sovereignty, meaning reclaiming your own mind. That the government has our minds. And that's what government means, to govern minds, which is an outside body of control. And so what Guruji Pattabhi Joyce gave me was a method and a technique to reclaim my own control, which I call sovereignty. We could call that Purusha. Purusha is the overarching soul. Okay, so our soul guides us through our life. Our ego tries to do this and that. But eventually this is where we don't understand free will. The ego doesn't understand free will. When we make an ego choice, then we have the problem with karma and stuff. But with when you have Purusha guiding you and you're connected to that, then you're still within your creative element. So Guruji would say yoga is mind control. Then he would say through a breathing system. So all yoga is about the conscious act of breathing. Yep. You could say that Guruji and Krishnamacharya said when you breathe in, that's God coming to you, and when you breathe out, that's you surrendering to God. Every breath is consciousness. We are all consciousness. From consciousness arises the idea. So let's say consciousness is Mary, is the Father. Why I say Mary is it's virginal, meaning the birth or the seed of idea comes from your consciousness. And so from consciousness comes the concept of Adam, the concept of Jonny. And so we are the son of the Father or of the Mother Virgin. So we are God in the manifestation. So Guruji's God into you, God. So each time I'm breathing in now, I'm breathing God in, I'm breathing myself in and breathing myself out, to be aware that each birth is an inhalation and each surrender is an exhalation. So mind control through breathing. I'm conscious of my breathing all through the day. When I have a stress moment, then I'm doing a focus 12, or if the moment's got me so captured, the moment I'm out of the situation, I'm sitting and grounding myself and breathing. So mind control through a breathing system, and that breathing system is a counted method. Whether it's a mantra, so if we were to do Om Namah Shivaya on the exhale, and Om Namah Shivaya on the inhale, that would be, say, 6 beats out, 6 beats in. If we measure it, if we count it, if we measure it, then we're measuring frequency. We're actually getting into the frequency of the breathing. So this is a bit of a paradox. If you actually measure your breath, you're measuring time. And the moment you start to measure time, you hold time in your hand.
And you said you weren't originally doing that this counted method came to you slightly later in the practice, right?
Well, it came to Lino and I very early, and I remember teaching myself to count in a workshop in Tri Yoga in Primrose Hill. I had Lino's book actually on the window ledge. So we were part of all of that at the beginning, and Guruji didn't specifically teach us the count, but he gave us the count. We wrote it down. We had clipboards and wrote it down. So we learnt it early, and I understood it. Once I understood it, I couldn't let it go. Because if we go through the Guruji Sutras again, mind control, breathing system, counted method, vinyasa. Vinyasa is Tristana. So in these order. So what is Tristana? Tristana is a trinity. It's the trinity of mind, God, breath, the spirit of that God. Yeah. Mind, breath, and body. What's that? The manifestation. So out there's all this manifestation stuff. It's just all the new age stuff. Yeah, it's all there.
And you did the drawings for that book, the Lino book. Well, other people, Jonny, you'll say the Tristana method is what is it? Breath, Bandha, and Drishti. And I was finding, where did I find this? I said posture, breathing, and Drishti. And now I read recently, I looked at your stuff, and you say similar thing, like posture, free breathing, looking place. So what did Sabi Joy say to you then? What was the Tristana that he taught you?
That
posture, free breathing, looking place, not breath, bandha, drishti.
No. So if we looked at the 99% practice, 1% theory quote, Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga is 99% practice, 1% theory. Practice, do your practice, and all is coming.
Yes.
For me, when I analyze it, the 1%, the first 1% that Guruji gave me was posture, free breathing, looking place. Because I am spatial, because I am dyslexic, because I am graphic, because I can have this imagination, I looked at the 8 limbs and put it in a circle rather than linear. And in the circle, I was looking at the wheel of yoga, and I could see that asana was posture. Okay, so asana, posture, bandha. Guruji would say, no mula bandha, bad speak. So no mula bandha, bad speak means with no mula bandha, then if you've got bad speak, you've got bad thoughts. You're in dukkha. You're in suffering. Okay? But so asana is posture. Posture's attitude. So I can sit up with a more erect attitude, or I can slump down and be a more lazy attitude. Yeah, and it's two different bandhas. So posture, bandha, free breathing. What is free breathing? So free breathing, you need ujjayi, eventually ujjayi. So I would put it asana, ujjayi. Now that's under pranayama. We've got asana, pranayama, pratyahara. Okay. So limbs 3, 4, and 5, asana, yeah, or posture. Free breathing. If I'm sitting without posture, my breathing's affected. If I'm sitting up too strict, too tight, too yang, then my breathing's affected. Yeah. If I'm sitting in the past or sitting in the future, I really want to be in the present. So in the present, you need to be samasthiti, whether it's standing, sitting, whatever position. So samasthiti, that principle's taken through the whole of the asanas. Can you find samasthiti in Iyengar's name, Tadasana? Can you find samasthiti in Trikonasana? Can you find samasthiti in Marichiyasana?
And what you're talking about there is right posture in that asana, the same neutral shape of the body with bandha.
And what does asana mean? Correct asana is sthira sukha asana.
Yeah.
Balanced, steady, and a good space in the body for that free breathing to arise. So the free breathing, all breath is free. If it's dynamic, it fluctuates. When you're static, then ujjayi is equal out, equal in. As mentioned before, God in, God out. God in, God out has to be equal. Sama. Samadhi. What is samadhi? Samadhi is holding the breath equal. If you can hold the space outside equal to the space inside, you're in samadhi. It's as simple as that. So samasthiti and samadhi are the same thing. So whether it's Jonny speaking or Richard Freeman speaking or Chuck Miller speaking, if you interview Chuck Miller at the moment, he's teaching samasthiti.
Yes, in every posture. Yeah.
Sama. Equal. So that's what the COVID did. COVID created a divide. Yeah. Equal means joining, meaning both are the same. Equal is equality. Equal is liberation. Equal is freedom. Equal is peace. It's only when it's an unbalanced equation is there separation. Yeah. So free breathing, all breath is free breathing, all breath is with sound. Guruji would say, with sound, make noise. So,
and he would say, did he say ujjayi to you? Did he use the word ujjayi?
He used free breathing. He used relax. He used not too stiff. No holding the breath.
Right.
Okay.
So I think this
also
ujjayi
said ujjayi.
Right. He did say ujjayi, did he?
And he said ujjayi. Yeah. So, but when is ujjayi? Ujjayi is in the state of the asana. And what does ujjayi mean?
Yeah.
It's called the victorious breath. The victor of what? Your own mind. So you're getting your mind in a state of sama. Equal inhalation, equal exhalation. God is equal inside and outside. Because Guruji's Drishti, the looking place is God. The looking place is right at the tip of your nose. I mean, it's there in front of you. Right at the tip of the nose is God. It's right. He, she is right there. It's you. It's your tip of the nose. You are God. Right here, at this point is where your life exists in this material world happens all the time. So posture, free breathing, looking place. Looking place is the breath, but basically here's the looking place, Adam. It's right in your heart. That's why I draw a wheel. If you then get the 8 limbs, spokes to if it's out of balance, then of course you're not seeing from the center of the heart. You're seeing from a bias. And that's where you have to get all 5, because he said practice, 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 do your practice and all is coming. He says practice 5 times, and those are the 5 outside practices. Some people say there's 4 outside practices, but the 5 outside practices are yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara. Pratyahara then is drishti.
I know people are going to be saying, okay, well, look, to put it bluntly, there's almost no one that I've seen who's had a practice like you. And you must understand the way that Bandha moves the diaphragm, right? But I never hear you talking about it, And when you talk about Ujjayi, and when people do Ujjayi, it tends to be this raspy sound that the breath never goes past the clavicle, yeah? And obviously, you're well aware of the stomach and the engagement of the diaphragm with the vacuum of the stomach. Can you speak a little bit more about the way that the Bandha and the diaphragm relate to each other on a practical level?
So let's look at the first pose. The first asana is discovered in Surya Namaskar. The first asana is downward facing dog. The first drishti that we're actually holding for a count of 5 breaths, 5 ins and 5 outs. And that is Nabhi Chakra, the navel center. So over 35 years, I've been nasal gazing, looking at the center of my navel. Okay, whether I see it is one thing or not see it is another. It's that the focus is from there. So when I'm breathing from my Uddiyana Bandha. And from the Uddiyana Bandha, I'm directing it through to, let's say, the sacred geometry of the breath. It's 3-dimensional. So the breath is not just breathing in and breathing out. Okay, so in order to get a 3-dimensional breath, you need to have, let's say, the intrinsic muscles of the body working. Some people call it core. So there's the intrinsic muscles or the core muscles of the pelvic floor, which is our Mula Bandha. Connected to Mula Bandha, like 2 links in a chain, is Uddiyana Bandha. So Uddiyana Bandha is really found at the very end of an exhalation. If you exhale a little bit more, the outer intercostals will draw the abdomen in more, and at the very end there's a good Mula Bandha. And from that place, if you can keep that navel in, you can then inhale, direct the breath, because the diaphragm's now has relaxed completely. You're going to draw that breath in through the muscle of the diaphragm. Now this is really interesting. There's 3 real key muscles. The 3 key muscles are the heart, the diaphragm, and the psoas. And all 3 of them are linked. Yeah, they're joined. Okay, so all 3. Now we move from our center of gravity from the psoas. That's Mula Bandha and Uddiyana Bandha. Linked to that is then the diaphragm. The diaphragm is going to operate properly from that foundation of Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, and it's going to free the heart. Okay, so we can use the metaphorical word of rib cage. The heart is locked in the cage, but the cage is open. The cage is completely open in the Uddiyana Bandha, exposing the diaphragm. So that's why if you do the full body control, there's that vacuum and there's that cave. Yeah, that cave. And the diaphragm's really, and the heart's there floating as if it's sitting on top of the cloud or sitting on top of a parachute. It's flying. So there you get the upward flying action. So when you asked about the practice, a certain sort of a practice, the lightness of a practice comes from Uddiyana Bandha, literally upward flying. However, there is 3 links in the chain: Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, and Jalala Bandha. Now they're not locked in asana. They're all the essence of them are there in action. We're having to meter and monitor the breath. Yeah, this is why it's really important to understand that the exhalation is a flexion and the inhalation is an extension. Okay, there is this pattern of expansion and contraction. When I contract, my Mula and my Jala are connected with Uddiyana at the center. When I then open up, I don't just take my head away. That cuts the 3rd link of the chain. So there's no trinity. There's always these trinities. Posture, free breathing, looking praise. heart, diaphragm, psoas. The psoas is huge. The psoas is our sympathetic nervous system operator. The moment that we are in stress, it's freeze, or it's fight, or it's flight, or it's flop. Yeah, the nervous system will cut out completely. And so by using the bandha, we're going straight in, we're hacking straight into our sympathetic nervous system to control the reflex response system of the situation, which is governed again, of course, by the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the muscle of breathing, yeah, and of course the heartbeat, the pumping of that. They're all connected, yeah. So as soon as you arrive in downward dog, you want to draw that navel in. Now, in downward dog, it's like a little pyramid. Let's say in the pyramid, that would be the king's chamber, Uddiyana Bandha. Down there, the queen's chamber would be heart. Yeah. Yeah, so when you're in downward dog, that's what you're cultivating. You're cultivating the foundation of the hands and feet, receiving the breath through the hands and feet from Mother Earth. You're cultivating not just the foundation, but then the link from the arms to the armpits to the groins into the central line. So then you're connecting into from the physical to the subtle energy body, to the bandha, throat, navel, pelvic floor. So in downward dog, you're not stretching your hamstrings or your back and your shoulders. Yeah, that's a side effect. That's a side effect. When you're there, you're looking for ujjayi, you're looking for sama, that equal inhalation, exhalation. You listen to the sound, and in order to achieve that, you need the application of your intrinsic core muscles, which is Mula Bandha, the pelvic floor, Uddiyana Bandha, the lower abdomen drawing in, so that the diaphragm can have its freedom to move. As I mentioned now, three-dimensionally, the breath has a length, the breath has a width, and the breath has a depth. We're not just breathing in and out, Adam. If we just breathe in and out, that's two-dimensional existence. In and out. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I mean, but do you think ujjayi as a term is a bit confusing because it encourages people to over-focus on the sound? They start making a big sound. Oh, it's ujjayi breathing.
Yeah, but free breathing. All breathing is free breathing. So free breathing is with sound.
The second thing I would say is you're having a coffee is like, just to clarify for people out there, I mean, you've already said it, so I'm going to repeat it. So therefore, it suggests to me that the bandhas aren't this squeezing. People will talk, and I'm constantly writing on this, is that the bandhas are squeezing the sealing the energy in and locking the bandhas. But it sounds to me like you're not talking about bandhas as a kind of that much of a physical muscular contraction in the way that you're speaking.
No, they are natural tonings of the body. So the asana, one of the functions of asana is to keep the body tuned, as we were when we were children, being active, playing, running, jumping, climbing. You don't need to be taught bandha there. Gymnastics. When you go to gymnastics, you're already doing it naturally. It's a natural tone. Playing golf. You're not having your tummy hanging out.
And I think, Godfrey, don't you, as an old friend of yours, Godfrey Devereux? Well, I mean, he doesn't talk about bandha. He says, get into the right posture, and then bandha is a natural kind of result of being in the right shape in the body, rather than do the bandhas and then the posture's coming. It's more the other way around. Exactly.
That was the conversation that people used to criticize. One thing they criticized in terms of the days of Iyengar and Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga. The criticism was that Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga had no alignment. Yeah. But we talked about breath and bandha. And then conversely, Mr. Iyengar was talking about alignment. So there's where you get the Godfrey Devereux connections through the Iyengar side of things. He never talked about breathing or bandha.
Yeah.
And he went from the body into the source where Guruji was working. So I would say that Mr. Iyengar was working from the outside in, and Guruji was working from the inside out. Same difference. Same. Result. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. What else can we talk about? Give me another Guruji Sutra. You were going on about Pratyahara. Do you want to carry on with that?
Well, the Pratyahara, if you really question Guruji, he would say that the looking place is God.
Yeah.
To see God in all. So let's say this way, we all, as we've talked about with our first teacher, all that, we might have our differences, and we can get stuck in our differences. We just get stuck, we don't grow anywhere. What we learn from the yoga is that looking place is from the heart. The real looking place, the real pratyahara is to look from your heart now. When I meet you now after however many years, what I want to see and meet is the God spark in you. Yeah? And in order to then be in that place, I need you to see the God spark in me. Yeah? So that's what we want to see, is that if I come to you with love, to see your love, then when we operate on that place, the pratyahara is not seeing things from my side only. So pratyahara, we get locked in on the complete drishti, to look at my thumb or my fingernail and look at my body, or look at my focus, look at my place, yeah? And that separates us out from everything. Now, Guruji said, no, see God everywhere. So for another way, I remember Richard Freeman, he just said one line, it just took me off on a big journey. Drishti is about finite and infinite at the same time. Okay, so like seeing nothing but everything at the same time. Because that's what we are. All of creation is everything. All of creation is nothing. Yeah? And so Drishti gets you to that point. Okay, we have to, first of all, we've got to calm all of the frequencies of the mind, all of the chitter-chatter in the mind. Because where the mind is active, of course, that's where the energy's going. And if we're thinking about the cafe downstairs and the people outstairs, and that's where our mind will go. Okay? So no, bring the drishti in, look at the screen, stay with Adam. Stay with Adam. Don't let my senses go and take me for another cup of coffee. Okay, so drishti is to harness those senses. The pratyahara is to take all 5 senses, put it into a fixed ekatattva, one pointed focus. If I can do that, what that means is my mind is not being pulled in directions like Krishna's chariot with the 5 horses. I'm getting all of my senses now to focus in and be in my command, rather than pulling me away. I say, no, I want my senses to come in here, and then if I can do that, then I can expand my senses. So in our conversation, because we're focused, we have a certain frequency. And it's scientifically, Adam, scientifically, that the one who listens has a higher frequency.
Well, I've done a lot of listening, so let's hope. I mean, I'm not a great listener. I'm trying. I'm learning to listen.
Yeah, so
I can listen to you all day. Honestly, I mean, but you know what? As I said to you at the start, you've not changed. I feel that you were saying this at the start, but yet you say you weren't. And then my favourite Guruji Sutra, to use your words of your Guruji Sutras, is the number one when he says to you, "That man only exercising." I find that utterly hilarious in a way, although it must have been devastating to you at the time.
Well, no, it's not, because he nailed me. He nailed me into the pratyahara. The pratyahara was, I was going out of myself egotistically. So he was saying, Jonny, your ego is out here on the poses. Yeah? You're looking good. Yes, you've got a good practice, but you're only exercising. He would then qualify by saying, no, mind here. He even once said to me, mind not New Zealand. And I was thinking New Zealand. And he said, no, mind here. Yeah? And there was one time when I was in the back row. I was the back row, and the more advanced people were in the front row. And when they finished their practice, we could move forward. I never got moving forward. I was praying and praying, praying. And then there was one day I was going into Parshvakonasana, and he read my mind, and he said, John Scott, you take your mat. And my arm just did a full circle, grabbed my mat, and I was there. Because he knew my focus was outside. And so that's why he kept on drumming into me counted method, free breathing, counted method, count the breath, count the vinyasa. And so even to this day, Adam, when I'm practicing now for myself, I whisper, Ekam, Dwai, Trini. It's my mantra. You mentioned right at the beginning of the interview the word mantra. For me, it's the mantra. And so when we chant that chant, the Sahana Vavatu chant, the last phrase, Shavahai, the Shavahai means may we not hate or have dispute with one another. Now, if I hear your voice and you hear my voice, yeah, and if we're able to have that conversation, then there is no dispute, yeah, because we will give one another the space to be heard. This is pratyahara. If I give you space to be heard and you give me space to be heard, then there won't be the conflict. It's only when we're not being heard, we're not being given the space, we then have the conflict. But ultimately, who's not listening to Adam? There's the ego Adam, the ego Jonny. There's the soul Adam and the soul Jonny. Do we listen to our soul? When we really make that connection and listen to ourselves, that's your soulmate. That's the yogic union. You're listening to that God spark of yourself. And so what I realized, the Shavahai, is we want to find our own inner voice. And for me to find my own inner voice, if I keep going, Ekam Dvai Trini Chatvara, if I keep that mantra running, it washes away. It's a brainwashing. It's washing away all of the unnecessary programs that don't serve me, washing away all of the belief systems that don't serve me. And then what rises is inner voice.
I think
if we could all get to that place.
I think it's funny for people listening to you and they're thinking, well, we know Jonny and his practice and posthumously the way you practiced. It's hard to think that you weren't 100% focused doing that. That you could still have other thoughts about New Zealand when doing a lift up to handstands and all this stuff, and you're still focusing on other things. Your mind can still be elsewhere.
Yes, but it can also be looking at, well, are they watching?
Right. Okay. And you had that, and you would confess to having that feeling about your practice, would you?
Absolutely. My ego was very, very out there. Look at me, Adam. This is what pratyahara is. We all want to be heard. We all.
How long? When did that go? Like when I met you, were you still feeling like that?
I don't know. It's a process. It's a long letting go process. So it's taken me to become retired, to retire from the world. Yeah. I mean, I remember hearing Norman Allen in his interview saying, I died to the world today. Yeah. And I'm thinking, what do you really mean by it? Are you just saying that? Well, I'm saying I retired to the world. Yeah, I've retired to the world. I mean, I've retired to that place of being a product to the world. And, in the 4 cycles or stages of life, Jung goes athlete, warrior, statesperson, renunciant. I definitely was an athlete. That's the brahmacharya phase. I was a real athlete and I was competing with myself, as we all do. And then when I became a father, I became the warrior. I had to be the best teacher to survive and to provide for my family. And then because from there I had to be the best teacher of the teachers. That's the statesperson, being the counselor. And now I'm at that place of being a renunciant. I just want to let it all go, Adam. Let it all go.
I understand. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned about being the renunciant, but it's only obviously it comes at a time of life as well. So when you talk about listening to the inner voice, well, yes, but you couldn't listen to your inner voice when you were the warrior, when you were providing for the family. I mean, you had responsibilities, right? Like that wasn't a possibility. So it comes at the right time.
and making choices and decisions which affect the rest of your life when you're in that place. If you're not listening to your voice, inner voice, you're making decisions from where? Who's making that decision? Who's making that choice? And those choices, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Here's your karma. If we've made decisions from the senses, from or the manas mind, there's the manas mind that is the processor of the senses. And the mantra is there to clean and wash the manas mind from all of those unnecessary attachments to the physical world through the senses. The buddhi is where we really make the choices in life, and the buddhi is that closeness to the purusha, to soul. If we can be making our choices from there, listening to that voice, I mean, that's why major things come in our life, because that's instigated by the soul, as opposed to you're deciding you want to do this, but sometimes the universe just won't let that happen. Something else happens. Why does that happen? Yeah, it's the soul that's doing it, because you're on a journey.
You think you could have listened to the soul earlier?
It needed the time. It needed the teaching. Where did the teaching come from? This is where the 99% practice, 1% practice, and all is coming. Some of us need to bang our head against the wall longer to stop banging our head against the wall. Yeah. I mean, we could change it that way. Some of us need to be putting our leg behind our head daily for a long time to realize, okay, I don't really need to put my leg behind my head anymore. I don't put my leg behind my head anymore.
So how does that? Yeah. Well, I don't blame you. At 66, I probably couldn't either. It sounds like a bad idea. Yeah, probably get stuck there. But well, so I would say you're in a great space now, in a great phase of your life now, and I mean maybe more than any other teacher, you've definitely had your phases, right?
Absolutely.
I can see you. Yeah, you had the family phase when I met you, and then you had a kind of mystical medicine phase. Are you still in that one? You're in it kind of like shamanic style stuff. Is that still affecting your teachings?
I wouldn't be where I am now if I had. So let's say the yoga practice took me to the door. Yeah, so it's a little like Morpheus taking Neo to the oracle and saying, I can lead you to the door, Neo, but you've got to walk through. And so I found in my yoga practice that, let's say for a long period of time, it kept me on the outside. It kept me in the material. It kept me in the body. It kept me in that outside projection of life. And the breathing, the pranayama, the meditation just could not take me to that next level. And so, so I have to, touch Julia's feet for introducing me to that part of our culture and heritage is mushrooms. Yeah. And what do these psychedelics do? They open up and expand your consciousness. And so, yes, it was a transformational journey. Now, it's not a t-shirt thing again like asana. So psychedelics for me aren't like a t-shirt of or a party thing or a to be doing thing. No, they come to you at the right time. They come to you at the right time, and if you don't have a discipline, a practice, or a meditation, then whatever insights you have in the process just stay on the shelf. Yeah. So just as we say we need to meet ourselves on the mat and we're working through stuff, same thing with any sort of psychedelic ceremony. You're going to a place and you meet yourself in a different place, a different journey. And that will, if you have a practice, you will act upon your insights. You'll act upon the teaching that you received, whatever it is. And so right now, my connection to nature is giving me what I need. Yeah. Mm. So it's not something that it doesn't become a practice. It doesn't become a dependency. It doesn't become a, yeah. But so we did do a number of workshops where we would invite other people in to have that avenue, to have the experience. And so, yes, I would journey with them. But I don't need to journey so much now.
Mm.
But yes, I will journey again when the time is ready.
Yeah, I did hear that you had included that in your workshops. It's very interesting. I mean, I haven't done anything like that since I was a teenager, really, and definitely wasn't the right context then.
Yeah, this is the thing. It needs to be ceremonial, and it needs to have a practice to really facilitate the follow through and the processing. You know, it's been so corrupted by governments that. And there's so many stigmas about it that there is now a new renaissance happening. There's a revolution happening where it's coming back again medically. So combined with music.
Well, yeah. It's not really in the society's interest for an individual to find their sovereignty. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's funny, the insights that you have are very. I mean, I'm speaking to this guy Shyam Ranganathan, who's an academic, a philosopher on yoga, and he's coming to he's looking at Ishvara as sovereignty. He's taking the Yoga Sutras and Ishvara for him as sovereignty. The podcast is coming out, so when the podcast comes out, listen to it. I'll drop you a line and tell you to listen to it, because the same insights, but he's coming. You realize them as you do because you're so embodied. He realized them through mind, because he's got a very, very intelligent mind. You just realize them. You realize them through your embodiment.
Yeah.
Well done. Yeah. I mean, to that end, John, I mean, Johnny, you always mention people to inquire. And I kind of find that people don't always want to inquire. How do you try and encourage people to look for themselves more in their practices, like you have, really? You've really inquired for yourself. Well, people often want, especially with you, they'll want to, John, what does John say about my practice, right? Like, what do you think? What I should do,
Well, that's the story of Siddhartha and Buddha. That's the story. I mean, you can either become a devotee of the Buddha and watch the Buddha be enlightened. Yeah, watch someone else be enlightened. You just take the seed of inspiration and make it your own. Make it your own. I mean, that's what Guruji never said he owned Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga. He said nobody owns it. Yeah, and so he wanted us to have the full experience. And so for me, I think because I had such a difficulty as a child through school and with dyslexia and all that, I had to question, why, what it was. And I realized that as a child, when I was daydreaming, I was actually meditating. That in the daydream, what is daydream? That's a form of pratyahara, where you take a posture, the body stops, you take a particular gaze, might be looking out the window or looking at the wall or something, but you're not really looking at it. That's Drishti, finite but infinite. It works as a portal, and you go into a place. Okay? So one of the things is that we get caught up with our belief systems. Now we have these belief systems. If you have a belief system, that means you don't know something, you're wanting it to be true. You're looking for it to be true. You believe something to be true. If you believe something to be true, that means you don't really know. So you have to delete the belief system and accept that you know nothing. In the process of knowing nothing, if you're focused in the moment of whatever it is you're going to do, the information will come through what you need in that moment. So this is the Ishvara Pranadhana. If you actually surrender to the Absolute, meaning you surrender the individual separate self to the Absolute, you surrender that to become nothing, you then become everything. So in terms of what you're saying about this other teacher, through the mind and through the academia world, they are learning. In this, what Guruji passed to me was to know you need to discard, let go, unlearn. So it was a beautiful journey to become somebody and then to go, I got it. I now got to surrender it. I've got to let it all go. Let it all go. Let all of those belief systems go. To know nothing. Because we then understand that if consciousness is everything, and everything is consciousness, how do we get to that place? We have to separate our individual self. So we have to transcend that ego self. So yes, the ego is important to take us into the discipline, to take us and get us in the focus, give it the job to be the one that studies and focuses, but then let it step out of the way. And so they're once again getting back to the counted method by simply going ekam dvai trini. You're actually saying to the ego, you look after this count. That's your job. Just look after this count. And in the process of doing that, the ego dissolves. In that
place, though, if you hadn't had the ego, you wouldn't have been half the teacher that you have been. Right?
This is the paradox.
You're a character.
It's the paradox. So was Derek. But he used it to try. So what you're saying then, back to the question, was inquiry. When I saw Derek, I thought, the thing is, what is it that is giving him this ability to be charismatic? What is it that's giving me this feeling? What is it? Can I create that? Can I find that seed within myself? And it's like,
exactly.
No, I can be a copy. So as you said, you don't want to be another Jonny. There was a point where I was a Derek copy. I was a Derek copy. Yeah, until I was one day going, big toes touching, ankles, reach up and look up. Inner elbows trying to touch was in Derek's vocabulary. And this one particular day I'm going, inner elbows trying to touch. And I'm going, but I'm hyperextending my arms. Derek was Tarzan. So Derek was Tarzan, and he was bringing his muscles to draw in. And then I went, actually, whose voice is that? That's Derek's voice. And what I realized too was that when I went from Derek to Guruji, I was still hearing Derek's voice, not Guruji's. And then I remember there was a point when I heard Guruji's voice, and that took over from Derek's voice. And then I'm going, well, hang on, there was Derek's voice and Guruji's voice. Where's my voice? Where's my voice? And that's what I want to pass to people is find your voice. Find your connection to your Purusha. Yeah, because we are
also
all
it strikes
unique.
me.
Yeah, we're all unique. We're all unique.
You had very little of that teaching, really. If you think about your time with Derek, if you think about your time with Guruji, and then when I met you again, I don't think you had an asana teacher for more than for a very short period of time, right? So you've really been your own teacher for most of the time, let's say.
We are all our own teacher. That's what Guruji gave me, was the connection to my own inner self, the guru within. That's the all is coming. He gave us a technique. So in a sense, you've got Maitri, welcome everybody with love and kindness. Mudita, Karuna, compassion. So Guruji welcomed me into Mysore, knowing that I was a Westerner with all my Western programs, knowing that within all of that there was suffering. But he was able, through compassion, to give me a tool, just as he was giving other people, to give me a tool to take myself out of the suffering. He could sympathize, he had empathy, but he didn't spin out. He gave me a tool, and therefore then there was mudita. Mudita is sympathetic joy. How many of us wrote books, made DVDs, all that sort of stuff? I don't own Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga, Guruji says. There he was able to see his students. He even endorsed my book that I wrote. Yeah. So he was able
Oh, did he? He did?
Yeah.
Right.
So he was able to have sympathetic joy, meaning joy for someone else's joy. Yeah. And then, of course, with Guruji, there was mudita, meaning equanimity or equality. He played his role. He played his role as my teacher, my guru, the one who was taking me on the path. But he gave me my own sovereignty, or the key to open, unlock the guru within, the teacher within. It's not outside of us. We're never going to get it from somebody else because it's their life. That's what I mean. We fall out of ourselves into love with someone else. We need to fall back into love with ourselves. And when we fall back into ourselves, that pratihara, or that looking place is looking from the love for the self to love others. If we love ourselves, we're not going to hurt ourselves, and therefore we're not going to hurt others. Yeah.
Yeah, weren't you defining ahimsa first of all as self-love? Didn't I hear that somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of your creative leaps. But I mean, I wasn't going to mention it, but we had a chat before, Jonny and I, and we were talking about Batabi Joyce and Johnny's, adamant love of Batabi Joyce, and obviously not everyone feels the same. And I wanted you to say that the little story that you told me about the bathwater and the baby, and your feelings about that, because I thought that was very relevant way to look at the Ashtanga system that you obviously love, and the character of Batabi Joyce, who was, everyone knows, somewhat flawed.
Okay, so I will add a little bit more to what we discussed. I recommend to everybody to take Geshe Michael Roach's book, How Yoga Works. And it's a beautiful story, a young Tibetan girl. You don't know what her name is until you get into the story. Anyway, she's called Miss Friday. And she refers to her teacher, Catherine, very much how I would refer to my teacher, Batabi Joyce, Guruji. What would Guruji say? What would Guruji do? And there was a point at which she's in prison and she's teaching the captain. And the captain is only regarding her as a girl, regarding her as a servant, employee, prisoner, as opposed to being his teacher. And there's the point really taken on that the teacher is a vessel. The teacher is the vessel for the information to come through. The vessel itself can be many shapes, many colors. It can be clean and shiny like Aladdin's lamp. It can be as dirty as whatever. But whoever's doing the teachings are greater than the man, or the work is greater than the man. When we're in a place of focus, we're further away from our separate individual self, whatever our failings are as a human being. Yeah. So anyway, the metaphor that I was saying was that in England there was a time when the father, the main man of the house, would have the first bath, and then progressively, in order of the hierarchy of the family, would then bath after the father, until the last person that was being bathed was the baby. And by this time, the bath water was so dirty that when they were chucking the bath water out, the saying arose, don't throw the baby out with the bath water. So I used this metaphor to Adam at the beginning of our little chat, that for me, the teachings that came through Patabi Joyce Guruji were the teachings greater than the man. And I could not throw out all of the teachings that I received for whatever was happening at that time when Guruji had passed and the Me Too campaign rose. For me, no matter what, I know all of the circumstances of Guruji losing a son, losing two sons in a sense, losing his wife, and all of these. As a human being, we have many, many things. And during this time, also, he lost his practice. We lost his teaching. Students got him back. So out of that learning, for me, the most important thing is to be on that mat every day doing the teachings that I got from my Guruji, which was Ekam Dvai Trini, Ekam Dvai Trini. We got Guruji teaching again after Amar died, and that was what kept him going. But basically, he lost his practice. He never got into the Vanaprastha stage, the statesperson stage. He never got to renunciant stage. Manju, lovely Manju, says that, the problem with my dad was he remained a householder his whole life. He supported the family. And, I mean, Guruji changed. Guruji definitely changed. But for me, my personal practice, my personal relationship with Guruji, I definitely was connected to my own sovereignty, my own inner guru, and that was given to me via my teacher, and I could not let that go. And my experience could not be invalidated. But the wisdom that I have is that everybody else's experience is their experience. And I had to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, that I could not throw Guruji away. Yes, ahimsa. I have to love no matter what. This is the problem in the world. We will. Israel and Palestine at the moment. I don't want to go into any politics because we should keep politics out of yoga.
Probably best.
But if we were able to just love one another and tell the truth, love one another and tell the truth. Now the problem is in the whole world is that everybody is experiencing separation trauma. What is that separation ultimately? Separation from God. Separation from Mum. Separation from everybody. Yeah. And one of my journeys was in Boom Festival down in Portugal, and it was a beautiful piece of graffiti on the poster, and it was love has no flag. Love has no flag. And the problem is that we have divided the world up into so many different parts. It came as the epitome of the whole division was COVID. I mean, COVID was the extreme of separating people. Even to the stupid rule about 6 feet apart. Was going to do nothing in the mask and all of that. I mean, I was a total pirate. I did not believe in the story one bit. And
no, I know that your feelings about that. Yeah.
So I just did not go down that path. And so what I'm trying to say is that Guruji gave me my sovereignty. The point where he gave me that was through a pure, clear vessel. Yeah. Now, that vessel arises when you're in a place of practice, in a place of focus, in a place of pratyahara, when you are actually in posture-free breathing, looking to place yourself. And that's why we have to take the yoga off the mat and keep the yoga constantly going. Keep the practice going. Yeah. And therefore, the posture-free breathing, that 1% theory, is what I keep going. I don't necessarily measure my practice in terms of quantity or series. It's more about where I take myself in my practice. And so my practice is a daily morning practice where it's only maybe 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes of practice now. But it's a total dynamic movement meditation. And that's what I would call it. I call it my morning whispers because I'm counting. And so all of the teachings that I've received, I've retained. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a good place to finish it. But what I wanted to say on that note, Jonny, is you've always been practical about this practice of yours. I mean, and that's what I learned when I was young and forcing my body, as you all know. I used to say things like, you don't have to make it so hard, or or sometimes you say, well, I just lie down. You were having young kids at that time. I just lie down on my mat. You know, some days I can't do any more. You know, or I do 30 minutes just standing postures, or, you know, I'm tired. You put music on. You know, you practice the music if you need a motivation. And other people, many people, even to this day, no, I can't put music on. I have to do the whole thing, practice every day. You know, and you never had that spirit, right?
Exactly.
It's a bit more practical about, yeah. And I think
freedom.
people need to know that.
It's about freedom.
This is Jonny, you know, one of the foremost Ashtanga teachers, saying, you know, I mean, you know, if it's 30 minutes, it's 30 minutes. If it's an hour, if you know, sometimes you liked a bit of world music. I remember you put a bit of world music and practice to that, you know, right? And I think the puritanical spirit is unfortunate for people.
Well, I did say we shouldn't bring politics into the yoga arena, but you have to remember that yogis are activists, in the sense they leave society. They choose to leave society because they don't agree with it. Now, everything becomes corrupt. And so we make a discipline. Within the discipline, then there's rules. It defeats the purpose. So where's the freedom in the yoga? The yoga still must lead to liberation. And what is liberation? So for me, my passion in life is to pass on to people that you can be free. You can be free of the system. You can be free of other people's voices. You can be free of other people's belief systems. Yeah, so we are rebels. I'm a rebel. So even within the Ashtanga, I am an Ashtanga Vinyasa practitioner by principle, not by rote, not by blind faith, not by it must be primary series, second series, in this order, No, I take the principles of practice.
Sunday intermediate.
Yeah, Friday, exactly. Primary. And must do back bends before you can do backdrops and all that sort of stuff. No. Yeah. So yes, we need to have guidelines to get people on the path. So it's a little bit like, let's say, the rules are a little bit like the trainer wheels on a bicycle. You want to take those trainer wheels off at some stage and ride the bicycle free. Yeah, and to be able to go wherever you want to go, not being controlled by those two wheels at the back telling you got to go this way. Yeah, and so for me, you know, when Guruji says mind control, what's mind control? Ultimately, mind control is having a free mind, which is what Neo says what Morpheus says to Neo. Neo, I'm trying to free your mind. So he's there on the roof before he does the jump program. Free your mind. Free your mind. Yeah. Free your mind means there is no rules. When he's in the construct, he's saying, in this place, when they're fighting in the dojo, do you think in this place there's rules? Rules are there. Rules can be broken. So we need the guidelines. Once we understand the guidelines, then we can choose to break the lines. We need. So you know, I am a rebel. I'm a total rebel to the system, because I'm a yogi.
And you know the final questions, Jonny. You know, so going on from that, like if you were ever to find a point when you didn't have inspiration for practicing, like, and this is a question that I know people love me to ask you. How do you keep inspired to practice every day when you don't find an inspiration? What's your motivation, or what do you do to make yourself go on the mat?
Simply, why am I here?
I could expect no other answer.
Why am I here? I'm here because I'm an exemplar. Currently at the moment, so I've just left my place in Sardinia. I don't have a shala. My neighbors have a shala. But I have a very beautiful deck out in nature. And before I left, we had 5 on the deck. So what gets me up, what gets me practicing, is I want to be able to keep doing that for other people. So this is also the message that comes through from Geshe Michael Roach's How Yoga Works. Is the secret of yoga is that you do your yoga for others. Now, what that actually means is you need to keep doing the yoga for yourself so that when people meet you as an exemplar or one, they ask you, what is it? Or they just want to be in your presence. Okay, so what gets me up and on the mat is I don't want to slip. I don't want to fall. Okay, so we could say that in a sense, yeah, we're all in that place where we can be greater than we are on the outside. Yeah, and then that's being human and that's being egotistical. But to be a guardian angel is someone that's mainly on the inside. And so to be a guardian angel for others, you need to have your own internal practice. And so I practice for myself to practice for others. And in the process, I actually have lots of guardian angels in my life as well. So it's reciprocal. So what gets me up in the morning is you. You, the practitioner.
That's a good answer. You can't really beat that. What about your guilty pleasure? You've been rehearsing this, I think.
Well, my guilty pleasure, the moment that you use the word guilty, I think of Manju. So Manju Joyce. Yeah. So Manju Joyce, Guruji's son, Manju will say, in India, we don't have the concept of guilt. So what is guilt? So guilt is another outside form of control. Guilt is another product of someone else's belief system that you've done something wrong. Okay, only your own internal Purusha can say, well, I shouldn't be having that. So, okay, the question is I shouldn't have another chocolate, or the question is I shouldn't have another coffee. Okay, so maybe coffee would be my to play with the question would be my guilty passion, my guilty yeah. I know that coffee is.
I remember you loved chocolate as well, didn't you? You loved chocolate too. You ate a whole bar of chocolate at a time, didn't you?
Yeah. Then have to tuck it away with Dodi Anabanda.
Jonny, I really appreciate having this chat again. It's been a long time. I think you said some wonderful things that will captivate others, I hope, that listen to this. And I want to thank you from everyone that listens to this, I'm sure, for spending the time with me today, having this chat. And I'll link your details below. If I'm assuming people are going to come to you're inviting people sooner rather than later to Sardinia. Is that right?
Eventually, I will be teaching a little bit more. I'm about to go to Norway, after Norway to China for a whole month, and then I get back to Sardinia, and Julia and I are doing 3 weeks. We've got a teacher training. Oh my God, a teacher training. The last ever teacher training. What have I got? What do I know to do a teacher training? It's just about practicing. So I no longer want to do any teacher trainings. It's full of material values. It's full of expectations. I don't know why I entered back into it. I think I entered back into it to find out that I've got nothing to teach. I've got something to share. And the sharing is more of a presence and more of a working together. And so I want to even let go of all of that sort of style. So people will be eventually coming to Sardinia. We're just trying to get the infrastructure set up that there's accommodation and to make it so that people can stay and do. But at the same time, I don't want to be teaching every week.
Done enough of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Done enough teaching for a lifetime. Thank you.
So no, it's more about like stages of life. To be in that stage of life where you're more of a mentor, just being able to have conversations with people, do a practice with people. So when I said we had 5 people on the deck, I wasn't being the teacher. I was just doing my morning whispers, and they were practicing with me. And so I had a dream once, and my dream was to be just practicing with people. And so that's what it is to be sharing the time together in a practice, breathing together, moving together.
Come a full circle.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I started with Derek. I just started beside Derek to practice.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that was the biggest gift that Derek gave me, was that it was his practice, and he said, yes, you can come and practice with me. And he took me through his practice. And I guess that's the full vinyasa. So as I would say, Guruji is a very important part of my life, but Derek will always be my root teacher in terms of that's where it began.
Well, thank you. Lovely chat.
Thank you, Adam. With love.